Growing up in my house, Sundays were filled with food, football, and family, and it was a time to be cherished. And even for someone like myself who wasn't all that into football, I quickly grew to love our Sunday tradition. My name is Alex, and I've been watching football for as long as I can remember. The only time I ever saw my Uncle Dave cry was when his favorite team lost the Super Bowl. And I think it's like this for a lot of American families, especially those with kids who play the sport. The whole weekend then becomes about football. High school game on Friday, Pee Wee League on Saturday, and all of the NFL games you can fit on Sunday, Monday, sometimes Thursday. It's become a way of life, and most of us don't stop to think about how the physical toughness of the game might be impacting the players and more importantly, the kids who are playing. But knowing what we know now, I don't think that kids should be playing tackle football until at least age 14. We've all seen the hard hits that NFL players take, but that's what we're there for. We want our team to win. We all know how loud the stadium gets after a huge sack to the QB, but from our perspective, our couch or sports bar, we can't imagine how hard these guys are actually being hit. And while the sport of football has been around for over a century, it's only been as recent as 2002 that the brains of former NFL players are being studied for possible damaging effects caused by the sport itself. Mike Webster was the first NFL player diagnosed with CTE, and this diagnosis was discovered after his death. You see, up until 2012, there was no way to diagnose CTE in the brain until after death. But the crazy thing is that once these studies started, the findings were quite alarming. Neuropathologist Dr. Ann McKee examined the brains of 202 former deceased football players, and out of those players, 111 of them were former NFL players. Out of the 111 NFL players, 110 were found to have CTE. And CTE is caused after brain trauma, specifically repeated brain trauma. When CTE occurs, a tau protein forms clumps in the brain that spread slowly throughout the brain, killing those brain cells. And one thing to note about CTE is that the symptoms don't typically show until years after the repeated head trauma. Most, if not all, NFL players started playing the game at a young age. And it's been only recently that Dr. Ann McKee has found that the players of the game at a younger age that playing the game at a younger age doesn't lead to more severe signs of CTE, but it does lead to earlier signs of the symptoms, like mood swings and cognitive impairment. Now, kids begin playing tackle football as young as 6 or 7, and that means they are taking hits for years and years. But children have brains that are still developing and growing, and does it make sense to allow them to engage in a sport that's causing harm to their brains during this development? I mean, we are just finding out that playing tackle football is tied to brain problems later. CTE can impact an individual's life tremendously. It doesn't matter if they know they have it or not. Now let's talk about Mike Webster again, the first player diagnosed with CTE. His brain was said to have experienced the equivalent of 25,000 car crashes over his 25 years of playing football. His symptoms became so severe that at times he was found sleeping in his car because he couldn't remember how to get home. Another name in which judgment arises immediately is former Patriots player Aaron Hernandez. And he died by suicide while serving a life sentence for murder. And after his death, his brain was tested for CTE, and it was found that his brain had the most severe case of CTE ever found in somebody that young. He was 27. We know the symptoms of CTE, like impaired judgment and decision making, and it's likely that having CTE affected Hernandez in ways that couldn't be seen until after his death. And Aaron Hernandez was villainized because, yes, he did commit murder. But can we say definitively that years of playing tackle football didn't play some part in the development of his brain and the decisions that he made? So we can see how CTE can affect not only the individual, but others around them. But if we are unaware of the brain disease, the blame simply goes on the individual. And even with recent findings, football has become such a beloved American pastime that for some it's just too hard to admit that players of the game have likely been suffering since its creation. Arguers will say that tackle football creates discipline and character in a child. If they can't learn to properly tackle at a young age, their technique might suffer later on, and others argue that tackle football teaches toughness. But is learning how to take a hit or perfecting the tackling technique at a young age worth the risk of CTE or other brain diseases that we now know result quite often in players of tackle football? Tackle football isn't the only sport to teach discipline, teamwork, and accountability. These values don't grow because the physical contact of the sport, and they are values that can be learned through mostly any sport. Those who argue that tackle football teaches toughness must realize the sexist nature of pushing certain ideals on young men. And teaching boys that they must be tough or must not cry is becoming a sentiment of the past. If anything, the symptoms of CTE caused by tackle football, including things like emotional stability, depression, mood swings, will end up weakening these players at some point down the road. So while banning tackle football at the high school level is very unlikely, banning the sport for kids under 14 seems like the best option. If we know that playing tackle football at a younger age onsets the symptoms of CTE and other brain diseases earlier, it makes sense to have kids wait until they're a little bit older to play the tackle form of the sport. And close to 1 million children within the ages of 6 and 12 play tackle football. And should they continue to play, every single one of them will be at a substantially greater risk for brain diseases like CTE, Alzheimer's, even premature death. If we can push the age allowed to play the sport until 14, we can lessen the amount of times a child's brain is experiencing this kind of trauma. Because of the proven brain damage that playing tackle football can cause, we can no longer in good conscience allow children under age 14 to play tackle football. Most of us know or have someone with kids who participate in the sport of tackle football, and I urge you to begin or continue the conversation of the damaging effects that the tackle version of the sport can cause. Parents of children who play tackle football might consider removing them from the sport altogether. And if you are aware of the risk of this sport and your child continues to play, they will be at a much higher risk of developing CTE or other brain diseases.